Greetings, you're watching Beyond the Ballot on Level Set. My name is Jackie Shabangu. Beyond the Ballot is a program where we bring you up to speed with the latest development whilst providing you analysis on, of course, the latest developments in the political landscape here in South Africa, the SADC region, and the borders beyond. Today, we continue to bring you the latest developments on the sidelines of the African National Congress, ANC Lekgotla and National Executive Committee meeting taking place at the Birchwood Hotel in Gauteng, South Africa. This meeting is held over a period of 5 days now, and it's concluding tomorrow, which will make it the 6th day. And the party is just gathering here to review its recent performance of the general elections, whilst having a strategy on key policy issues which are aimed at advancing the country forward where it matters the most, whilst also consolidating its strategic relations with other global partners. So now we're going to give you the recent developments on what has transpired over the past 4 to 5 days. So stay tuned.
I'm sure many of you here are aware what HIV/AIDS nearly did to our country if we did not intervene. The level of absenteeism in the mines, in the schools, in the factories was overwhelming, but we have to put it under control. So that's why health issues are so important. Now, in dealing with them, we are simply guided, apart from resolutions, but in going on with our work, we are guided by the 6 building blocks of the World Organization. In simple language, we are very lucky in health because the WHO, the World Health Organization, which many of you started knowing of during the COVID era, has already declared that a health system anywhere in the world has got 6 building blocks. And countries must make sure that those 6 building blocks, which you may call pillars, they stand strong all the time. If any one of them is weak, the population will feel it. They won't know, of course, that is a building block. They won't know anything about that. Many don't know about World Organization, but they will feel that something is wrong or something is missing in their everyday life. So for that reason, we cannot make mistakes. The first building block is leadership and governance of the system. Who is leading healthcare, right from the clinic level, hospital level, and until. The second one is access to essential medicines and other commodities. You may remember a few weeks ago, there were problems in the Eastern Cape where they ran out of syringes and needles. Fortunately, it's corrected. People felt it. They didn't know that is one of the building blocks of the World Organization, but they felt that something is lacking in our system, which was causing problems. The third building block is the health workforce, which you commonly call human resources, because it is a problem all over the world. And the fourth one is health system financing. I'm going to be visiting this one before I sit down, because it's also very important. Health system financing is how you finance your health system in that country. We're not talking about the budget here. We're talking about financing the whole system in totality. The fifth is the health information system. You'll be surprised to know that in this world of extremely advanced technology, many countries are still suffering on the health information systems, which I'm also going to explain in a short while. And the last one is the health service delivery system. In what packages do you deliver health to members of the public? If I'm a woman and I'm pregnant, what can I expect from the health system? What's my package? How am I going to be taken care of until I deliver? And if I deliver a baby, that baby who's arriving in the world for the first time, what is there for this baby? What can the health system offer this baby so that the baby doesn't get stunted or is able to be a productive member of society? Now, those are the building blocks. Now, in the middle of these building blocks, I didn't put them in the order of importance, is health system financing, which has now become a very, very hot topic in South Africa. That's what we call NHI, health system financing, as one of the pillars of the healthcare system. If it is not resolved, we will persistently and consistently feel that there's something wrong in our healthcare system. And we are doing so. So the resolution that has been taken is that we must move very fast to start putting together Section 57 of the NHI Act. Section 57 is about transitional mechanisms, preparing to put up committees, boards, etc. And there's a couple of them that we'll be dealing with. Now, I'll come back again to the issue of NHI, because at any rate, I know it's foremost in your mind. When you see me, the first question on your lips is about NHI. I know that. So I won't run away from it. That's why I'll put it up front. But I want to talk about the health information system, because I made a statement here that you'll be surprised to learn that in this fast, the world of artificial intelligence, etc., many countries are still struggling with the health information system. What actually do we mean? Just to give you a simple example, it happened to me 35 years ago. You'll be surprised to learn that it's still happening today, 35 years later. That's when HIV/AIDS was starting to manifest itself. I was running a practice in Ekurhuleni. A gentleman entered my practice. After examining him, I concluded that he must be HIV positive. At that time, there was no rural facility that could even diagnose HIV, not to mention treating it. We just could not even diagnose it. What you used to do then, you apply to the bigger hospitals, which are all in Gauteng. In our case, it was the then Garangua Hospital, which is called George Mukari. If it's urgent, you get an ambulance immediately, you transfer them. If it's not urgent, you apply and wait for a response. So I applied, described the symptoms, my findings, and said, please take over. I suspect this person is HIV positive. The response came within 2 weeks. They said, this man is our patient, is already on treatment for HIV and AIDS. We don't know why you want to start from the beginning. But that was happening because there's no integrated health information system. So what am I talking about? Any patient, even now in modern day South Africa, you can move from facility to facility in the public sector, from facility to facility in the private sector, from facility to facility between the private sector and the public sector, from doctor to doctor. You can move to 10 of them. All of them are likely to do the same thing to you, because they simply won't know that this has already happened to you. There's no mechanism of knowing. And so that's why we want an integrated system. Now, fortunately, we have already gone to CSIR, because we argued that South Africa has got a lot of knowledge and facilities which can do these things. We have gone to CSIR to ask them to develop a homegrown system, because part of this problem is that there are many IT companies. Each one of them wants you to buy their product, and they'll tell you what it can do and all that, and you buy it, then another one comes. So we said, let's have a homegrown system, which is owned by us, which is open source, which nobody can claim. The CSIR has worked on it, health patient record system. We are now busy piloting it in the Free State. And just yesterday, we moved the pilot into a private practitioners to start including private practitioners around to see where we can integrate with them.
It's quite important for our economy to grow. We've got special economic zones and we've got industrial parks. But what has been a problem before is the securing stable and sustainable market for SMMEs in those industrial parks. And how are we going to address this issue going forward? As you correctly say, there are those light industries that you get in industrial parks, dealing with clothing, manufacturing of furniture, chemicals and digitants and all of that. We have passed the act now, which is Public Procurement Act. it is enacted, it is in place. It now allows us to have set aside. You will then have set aside based on one sectors of the community you want to target. Set aside for women, but set aside for localization. And that could be a district or the operating industrial or entities in those industrial parks. And to then go further and enhance that, the Lekgotla agreed that the National School of Government, as well as relevant department that deals with training on procurement, must engage on immediate and urgent program to train SCM and CFO on how to implement this public procurement, which will help us to address and achieve set-asides. And that will go a long way also in addressing the monopoly in terms of the structure of the economy. May I then take, maybe on the issue of student accommodation, I hope we will meet soon with the minister at a government level. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has adopted a program called Asset Optimization Plan. That strategy talks to optimizing on public assets, the buildings. The real custodian of properties, public works, a number of buildings that are not utilized. We're saying those buildings could be offered to the Department of Higher Education, either through the private sector, to renovate, operate, and then would transfer later to government. And that was presented in the previous administration. The strategy was adopted. My final issue, as I'll be allowed to join the plenary, is where are these new jobs coming from? We said from now till 2025, let's develop an industrial plan, an economic plan, based on, one, the fiscal and macro instruments, but based on, one, energy, transport and logistics, and all that becomes your input cost in any production. So let's look on that and look futuristic. But for now, where are these plans? We have master plans that we have already put in place. A master plan on your automotive sector, be a master plan on poultry, on sugar, and a master plan. There are few, I think there are 4 or 5. 8. So we're saying let us start implementing those master plans in a very, very localized approach and industrialized approach. So the first is expected to come from there. But lastly, we say infrastructure should continue to be the catalyst for job creation. And as Comrade Kupai reported, we are saying let's have a catalytic project packaged and implemented in a way that grows the country. What are the example? It is Operation Ukuvuselela, the railway from Pretoria to Gqeberha. It is the railway from here in Johannesburg to your Polokwane, the railway from Johannesburg to Durban. These impact, high impact project that we say should be catalytic.
In our interventions that we come up with, we are guided by the Constitution. It is an obligation that each and every learner or person in South Africa must be afforded that opportunity for schooling and learning, which is Section 29 of the Constitution. Balungile, you know, there is a set narrative that I came up with when I had an engagement with Minister Blade in Nzimande. He's saying there is a study that he once read, and the findings are that in South Africa currently, the intake out of 100 learners that are enrolled, in basic education, out of that 100, the people that then progress to university are only 4. And then out of that 4, there is only 2 that complete their qualifications within a record time. These other 2, they either dropouts or they've got some modules that you say it's what the thing? The subs or whatever, or you fail. So our interventions then are trying to then rectify that problem. As much as we do not have systems in place to assess how many then do they succeed in terms of post-education system. But what we are trying to do in terms of our interventions is to ensure that there is access to education, there is success, there is quality of learning and teaching, as well as responsiveness. What we have done to try to close that gap or to balance the gap that we have identified is to establish cities. There are centers in our communities which are called community education training centers. So they were trying to close the gap of those who couldn't make it either to the universities or to TVET colleges, so that they are able to learn how to write, how to read, and then to get some of the technical skills for them to be able to make means out of that. So those are the measures that we have put in place. However, on top of that, there is a committee which is called Human Resource Development Committee, which is chaired by the Deputy President in South Africa, and the department, the minister in the department is more of a secretariat. It has got a number of goals. The first one is to improve early childhood learning and schooling. Then the second one is improving employability, responsiveness, as well as governance. So we are indeed trying by all means to close the gap that you have identified. The second question, I think it was coming from Mawande, around skills revolution, is it? Yeah. So Mawande, it is not going to be a total overhaul. We are going to be guided, obviously, by the industrial plan that my sister here, Mamloko, spoke about, and Comrade Sigalala. But what we are doing, we're mapping skills needs per province, because, you know, our provinces are not the same. Others, they are strong in terms of agriculture. Others are very strong in terms of mining. As I'm talking to you today, amongst the resolutions that were taken in this Lekgotla is to establish 2 universities that are going to focus on mining, in Limpopo as well as Northwest, because those are mining communities. So we want to emphasize mineral processing. We want to establish not a university, faculty of mining in those 2 provinces, because what we have established is that Limpopo, Northwest, and Northern Cape, they are the mining belts of South Africa, hence they do have the current minerals that we have, as well as the minerals of the future that are going to contribute into inclusive economic growth of the country. So we want to bring in those skills that are needed in our economies that are going to respond to potential industries that are going to be established moving forward with the expansion of our TVET colleges, and then looking at the curriculum to meet those needs. The last part is Bella Bill. You know, we shouldn't enter into the debate of saying whether you see eye to eye or whatever. The reality of the matter as we stand is that the ANC is advancing in terms of transformation of basic education in South Africa. We are responding to the needs of our people, in particular the poorest of the poor. So what is happening? The bill is currently in the office of the president. and it is going to be promulgated. Thank you.
Perhaps one of the things that colleagues in the media, but also the public, will have to consistently remember, as ministers, we might have opinions, but we act collectively, and we are collectively and individually accountable. So the powers of a minister in terms of Section 91 of the Constitution are delegated by the President. So a best way as a minister, when you have a different view of a decision of a cabinet, because that bill did not go to Parliament from a minister of basic education. It went through cabinet. It is decision of a cabinet. So the correct way is for a minister to go back to cabinet and explain the differences and convince cabinet, because it's not a decision then of Minister Mutseka. It's a decision. Bella Bill was approved by cabinet to be submitted to Parliament. So it's a decision of cabinet. So Section 91 and Section 92 does give us parameters as ministers of how to operate and how not to operate. I think that closes the chapter until the minister goes to us as members of cabinet collectively and convinces us that why the president shouldn't sign. I don't think it's appropriate for having to comment in the public. Coming to the issue, I think, Shannon, you spoke about the issues of where the jobs will come. And just quick one, I won't take long. What we did to plenary and to ANC, we went and looked at the composition of where jobs are, and I think some of the colleagues spoke about that. I think you asked, Lunga, where will these jobs come from? When you look at how the sectors contribute to the jobs, for example, the biggest contributor, and we were trying to make sense of whether those sectors will continue to be the growth for us to expand in terms of the jobs, or whether we'll have to go back to some of the areas where they're suppressed to be able to support them and get the jobs from. So, for example, currently you'd have what we call community, social, and personal services contributing 24% of the jobs, followed by trade, catering, and accommodation, 20%. Now, when you look at trade, catering, and accommodation, the outcry is that majority of the people in this 20% are non-South Africans. And that's why one of the pronouncements is to say, we should be able to say some of the jobs must be preserved for South Africans. And most of us as we grew up would know that even as students, we could go and work in retailers, as part-timers in restaurants, and first time as you graduated from school, the first thing you could do, you would not stay at home. You'd be able to find a job in a retailer. And that assisted a lot in terms of the job. So we were paying attention to that to see. But when you look at construction is currently contributing 7.5% in the jobs, but it's currently, it's actually a 2.4% in the GDP. Now, construction has potential to grow. And we looked at what are the other issues that are affecting us to be able to get more in terms of the jobs, but also contribute more. Because previously, if you look at the statistics around 2008 and before, you'd find that construction was around 8% contribution to GDP. So it has shrunk. Now, part of what we had to pay attention to is issues to say safety and security must help us with the issues around construction mafias. Because today to construct, it takes longer and it's more expensive. So that's why you've got to be able to look at those things. Now, this is what we are doing with the jobs. It's not saying that government alone. So I'm answering two questions, two colleagues. I think it's Shannon and also Lunga. Government has a role to play in creating a conducive environment, enabling, for example, the mining licenses that has to come so that we can bump up a lot of mining licenses and mining rights to be given. But secondly, in terms of the energy security, we know that when we had load shedding, quite a number of mines reduced in terms of productivity, and therefore the jobs were affected. So it's part of the role that we have to play in intervening, responding to the restrictions or constraints, but equally when we play our role as government is to look at our areas. For example, what we have been doing in presidential stimulus job creation, those then will come in. So we'll play a role in terms of ensuring that where we have vacancies, we must fill them, because we can't talk about job creation when majority of the departments do not fill vacancies, sit with more than 20% of vacancy rate. So that's part of what we're emphasizing. It's a balancing act that we understand private sector and public has a role in playing in terms of the issues. I think the issue of SMME can be emphasized. That's why we are bringing it to the center as well. that we don't want just SMMEs to be supported in terms of funding. We want consumption of products produced by local businesses, SMMEs. And that's why we made one of the examples as school nutrition. You are coming to the hospitals. Who makes the linen? And Comrade Motsoaledi will have to come back and tell us how they are also ensuring that we can. I was saying to the colleagues there, some of them, that the inclusion of even the public procurement bill actually is an enabler, but it doesn't preclude, no law actually stopped us from ensuring that we can implement set aside. For example, in human settlements, we're already implementing 40% set aside for women, 50%, and we can account out of our budget in terms of construction, how many women in business. That's why we were able to sign an social compact with them. So we are saying we are going to monitor now. Each department must account. Comrade Motsoaledi will have to account. He's not in the ETC, but because he runs a major department, will have to come and tell us how is he supporting SMMEs. So we want to see this tangible work, and we are saying the state is the biggest procurer, and therefore we should be able to utilize the levers of the state to be able to intervene and deal with poverty and unemployment. The reality today is that more people are living in poverty. That we can't run away from. I was saying to the colleagues, we read a study, and it's coming to what Ndebo was saying. We read a study about 40% of people in Soweto living with one meal that is not even full nutritious. And that tells you, because previously we would have identified districts. I don't know if you remember when we dealt with war on poverty during the Thabo Mbeki era, and I'll come to what you were raising. And one of the issues would identify, for example, Msinga. And the intervention there today are still relevant, because what we did when we intervened in Msinga, we made sure that people who did not have access to IDs, passport, not ID, birth certificates and all that, because they were not accessing schools, they were not able to access social packages. And that intervention, even in turning around that situation, was able to open opportunities in terms of that community. It's far better compared to that time when you look at it. The second community that we intervened at that time was Lusikisiki. When you look at Lusikisiki pre-2006 to Lusikisiki today, you see that the interventions, which were based on economic interventions, were actually have turned the situation around. Now, but what we are facing today is because the cost of living has gone up higher. Now, what we would have put as interventions as government, social packages, and I'm coming to the issues of PIG, it's not really making meaningful intervention in the hands of South Africans. Because if we are giving a social grant of 1,900 to a senior citizen, previously in 2007, that was a lot of money in the hands of a senior citizen, and they were able to raise children. That's why you'd have, for example, I was in Kabeja in the election, where we had first-time voters saying, I am voting ANC because my grandmother raised me and I was able to go to university, finish my school because I was supported by a grant of my grandparent. And the fear we have, and all of us today, is will that grant today be able to support that child that exists, to be able to go through high school and be able to enter university? That's the question this 7th administration, which is a GNU-led government, will have to answer. But overall, when you look at over policy, and we did that roadmap in the plenary of what we did, Ready to Govern 1990, RDP 1994, and the elements of it, GEAR 1996, ASKISA 2005, NGP New Growth Path to 2010, and NDP 2012. And then we looked at the elements of it all round, and we found similarities. So the issue from a policy point of view, it has been consistent to identify the issues. For example, as back as RDP 1994, we spoke about structural reforms, which we are talking to today. Now, the issue has been the direct implementation of those policies. And that's why ANC previously would have acknowledged that from a policy point of view, we've never lacked. What we have lacked, or we have been found shortfall of, has been on the implementation. And that's why when we did the ERRP, we went and put mechanisms in place to be able to implement, and we could account for almost 90% of achievements in terms of the ERRP as we closed it last year. Now, that's what we are taking as lessons when we go forward. What we are seeing is a growth of a population.
Even in the most trying moments in the complex history of our struggle and our country, the ANC has always taken decisions in the best interests of the people of South Africa. We have not succumbed to cynicism and despair. We have recognized the strength of our movement, the enduring faith of the people of South Africa in the vision of a free, democratic, united and equal society, and the enormous potential in our country to provide meaningful livelihoods and opportunities for all. We have reaffirmed our determination to achieve a national democratic society. This is a vision from which we will not retreat. We have agreed that the challenging conditions in which we now prosecute the national democratic revolution demand greater focus, they demand discipline, application, as well as focused execution of our decisions. These new conditions require that we be innovative and agile in dealing with the pressing problems of the people of our country in every locality across the length and the breadth of our country. They also require that we be firm and unwavering in our strategic intent and foresight while remaining flexible in our tactics. The Lekgotla has outlined the actions we need to take in government, in our movement, in communities and in other areas of society to advance fundamental social and economic transformation. This Lekgotla has underscored the centrality of ANC structures, especially in communities, and the quality of ANC members who must undertake work in every community and sector of society. We have said that we cannot undertake the tasks required of us if we do not unite the ANC and if we do not renew the ANC and strengthen it. As the 2024 elections have reminded us, and as we know from our own history, there is no way that we can advance the national democratic revolution without effective and active structures of the alliance and the broad democratic movement. By the same measure, we need ANC members, ANC volunteers, cadres, and leaders who are committed, who are selfless, and who are themselves capable. They should be people who have integrity, who display advanced levels of political consciousness. Through organizational renewal, we need to promote principled, transformative, and emancipatory activism and politics. This Lekgotla has confirmed that the ANC must proceed without delay and with greater energy with the renewal of our movement. Comrade Blade Nzimande reminded us that we cannot renew the ANC without renewing the alliance, and we agree. We must now make it a priority to build the alliance as a cohesive and effective agent of change within a common program of action. We will continue to engage with our alliance partners on the government of national unity, having taken the view that the government of national unity is the best tactical option, that the ANC also is fully aware about the risks and the potential threats of this moment. We have noted the statement of the South African Communist Party on the occasion of its 103rd anniversary, that the party, as they said in their statement, takes a critical but non-oppositionist stance towards the government of national unity. And we welcome this. We agree with the SACP that we must ensure that our participation in the government of national unity does not undermine our core principles and goals, but serves as a platform to defend and advance working class interests. We agree with them there as well. It is necessary that the entire alliance must discuss how to handle all the pressing political, strategic, tactical, and organizational questions. We will emerge stronger from the current strategic setback if we are united and work together as comrades and not personalize political issues. President O.R. Tambo's words at the 48th ANC National Conference in 1991 have great relevance when he said, "We did not tear ourselves apart because of lack of progress at times. We were always ready to accept our mistakes and to correct them. Above all, we succeeded to foster and defend the unity of the ANC and the unity of our people in general. Even in bleak moments, we were never in doubt about winning our freedom. We have never been in doubt that the people's cause shall triumph." Close quotes. The ANC-led alliance can handle all challenges of this moment and turn the setback into strategic advantage to propel the transformation agenda forward. When we are united, we can never be defeated. We should be able to make progress from the jaws of a setback. The Lekgotla has paid particular attention to the task of communications and the need to engage more vigorously in the battle of ideas. We were reminded that communications is an essential political task that must be integral to our work, whether in the movement, in communities, or in government. We know that actions do speak louder than words. We communicate through our conduct, our actions, and the difference we make in people's lives, and the difference, that we make in people's lives. If we are divided, if we tolerate acts of corruption and patronage, if we live lavish lifestyles through which we show ourselves to be better than our people and appear to only look after our own, then not even the best communication strategy will be able to improve our standing amongst our people. The renewal of the ANC must be reflected in our everyday behavior, on how we conduct ourselves in public platforms, and what we post on social media. Let us not occupy headlines for wrong reasons. Let us be known for excellence and competence. Every NEC member, every public representative, every deployee of the ANC and every cadre must consider themselves as communicators. They need to be suitably skilled and capacitated, and they need to understand the positions and messages of the ANC and need to exercise discipline and responsibility. This Lekgotla has confirmed that amongst the many actions that we must now take, our apex priority at this time is inclusive economic growth. We understand inclusive growth to be a process that creates employment for the millions of South Africans who are today without jobs. It must be growth that prioritizes the interests of the poor and the working class. We understand inclusive growth to be transformative. It must contribute to fundamental changes in our economy's structure, in its systems, and the institutions that support it to benefit all South Africans, focusing on blacks in general and Africans in particular. The economic growth we should pursue must lead to the empowerment of women, young people, and vulnerable groups in our country. The Lekgotla has agreed that we should implement our economic policies and have greater focus on infrastructure, agriculture, beneficiation of our minerals, transport, energy, logistics, the digital economy, and industrialization. As we undertake this task, we must, as a matter of urgency, intensify the work to drive investment in infrastructure and the productive economic activity. We must complete the reforms that are currently underway to improve the efficiency and capacity of our network industries, especially electricity, transport and logistics, water and telecommunications. We have said that we will continue to use public procurement to support SMMEs as well as women-led and owned businesses, and also to increase financial and non-financial support for the SMMEs. We need, in particular, to support women and youth-owned businesses and emerging industrialists as well. We recognize that participation in economic activity is the most effective way to lift people out of poverty and improve their lives on a sustainable basis. We also recognize that we must use the sustainable capabilities of the state to far greater effect to reduce poverty and shield people from the high cost of living. This requires us to strengthen social protection measures, such as grants and the provision of subsidized services, while providing people with pathways into economic activity and skills development. We have said that among the steps we must take to address the rising cost of living, we must conduct a study and review the mechanisms for determining various administered prices, such as fuel and electricity, and look to expand the list of basic goods that are VAT exempt. With so many people living far from economic opportunities and services, and transport, the costs that they have to incur in transport takes up a large part of people's income and drive up living costs. We therefore need to invest in public transport, restoring and expanding the operational capabilities of the commuter rail system, and implementing an integrated public transport system that is safe as well as affordable. We have highlighted the social and economic value of affordable, accessible, quality health care that is available equally to all South Africans. We will therefore proceed with the implementation of the National Health Insurance. We will invest in our health infrastructure. We will invest in our health infrastructure and the training of health personnel and improve the quality of care in both the public and private health sectors. It is essential that we undertake this work so that South Africans can live longer and healthier lives. This will enable our people to be more productive so that they can be lifted out of poverty. We have emphasized that our education system, from early childhood development through to post-school education and training, must prepare young people for the world of work. The Lekgotla has identified practical actions that we must take to strengthen vital areas in our education system and skills development for young people. Skilling our young people in digital skills must be implemented conscientiously and fully. Nazoke. We have recognized that building a capable developmental state must begin with the ANC and the Alliance. We need to build the capacity of the ANC to provide leadership to the state and to ensure that the state faithfully and fully implements the electoral mandate. The Lekgotla has reaffirmed the developmental importance of a professionalized public service with robust mechanisms for capacity building, which will involve regular training for our public servants. We agreed that we should ensure that performance management, accountability, and consequence management should be enforced, and it will be enforced. We agreed that we should not limit our understanding of a capable state to the executive only. Parliament and legislatures are vital in ensuring that the state is both efficient and accountable. As the movement, we need to give equal attention to the work of Parliament and our legislatures to ensure that we deploy capable and committed people to these institutions and that they have the resources and capabilities to advance our movement's electoral mandate. We must focus at this time on building capable and developmental local government. It is at this sphere of government where the state can have the greatest effect and where there is now the greatest need. The Lekgotla has identified the value of the district development model in aligning the work of all spheres of government more effectively in strengthening the provision of local infrastructure and services. We have agreed that local government must be placed more firmly on the national agenda because the performance of local government is vital to the success of our efforts to inclusive economic growth and to reduce poverty as well. The Lekgotla has called on government to focus on the prevention of crime and to address the social and economic conditions that fuel crime and violence in our country. As the ANC and Alliance, we need to take a far more assertive role in mobilizing communities and all social formations in a countrywide effort to tackle crime, gangsterism, as well as violence. An integral part of that work must be the fight against gender-based violence and femicide. As we strengthen the response to the criminal justice system and improve the support provided to survivors of these crimes, our priority must be on prevention. We must ensure that the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide is constituted without delay, and it must also be capacitated so that it can coordinate and drive a response that is multidimensional and involves all stakeholders. As the ANC, we have a clear mandate from the electorate. Whenever we are deployed and wherever we are deployed, we have a responsibility to implement the commitments that are contained in our manifesto. This Lekgotla has provided us with further direction on how we should implement our manifesto commitments. We have recognized that we need to undertake this work within a government of national unity, comprised of parties, some of which we have sharp political and ideological differences. We need to provide leadership to the work of the government of national unity, not through the imposition of our will, but through the strength of our positions and the clarity of our purpose. We need to make use of the fact that the principles and minimum program contained in the statement of intent that the 10 parties of the GNU committed themselves to provides a basis for far-reaching social and economic transformation. Drawing on the deliberations of the Lekgotla, we will translate the minimum program into the 7th administration's minimum term development plan that will enable the implementation of our electoral mandate. The Lekgotla supported the calling of the National Dialogue as an initiative that will enable us to craft a comprehensive national social compact that will determine the South Africa we want. We agreed that the National Dialogue must be as inclusive as possible. Many countries are increasingly recognizing the important and constructive role that South Africa has played and continues to play in continental and international matters. As the ANC and the Alliance, and as a country, we will execute our international responsibilities to promote our country's national interests and advance the interests of our continent. We will continue to give greater strategic attention to the work that we need to do to advance the interests of the Global South. The Lekgotla has recognized the significance of South Africa's presidency of the G20 and the opportunities that this presidency of the G20 provides to us to advance the needs and interests of the African continent and the Global South. Our participation in BRICS is beneficial to our country in political, social, and economic terms and needs to be taken forward with a great deal of commitment. We need to make our G20 presidency an important pillar of our efforts to advance sustainable development, inclusive economic growth, justice, peace, and stability across the globe. The positions of the ANC on solidarity with the struggles of the peoples of Palestine, Western Sahara, Cuba, and elsewhere must continue to find expression in the programs of our government. As we have done in the past, the Secretary General's office will publicly communicate the more detailed outcomes of the Lekgotla as canvassed in the Commission's and as adopted by this Lekgotla in the next few days. We leave this Lekgotla encouraged, energized, and inspired. We have identified the tasks our movement needs to undertake in the weeks and months ahead to meet the expectations of the people of South Africa. We have a firm sense that we must do on what we should do rather to rebuild the ANC and the alliance and to begin to restore people's trust in our movement. The NEC will be holding another meeting in the next weeks to conduct an in-depth and introspective analysis of the state of our organization on a branch-by-branch basis, with a view to enhancing the renewal of our movement. We are committed to a robust outcomes monitoring and accountability framework of the work that we do in the ANC and in government. We will focus on implementation and the execution of the decisions that we have arrived at. In the end, no strategy can deliver outcomes unless it is converted into specific actions. Every leader, every cadre, public representative, and employee must accept the tasks they have been given and take personal responsibility for the manner in which they perform these tasks. This Lekgotla has therefore provided the guidance that we needed. We initially held a government Lekgotla which reinforced the actions we need to take with regard to the statement of intent. But this Lekgotla has now come up with specific actions that need to be taken. And this will be taken forward in government, obviously with discussion with other parties.
Well, that's it. You've heard it. It's all systems go. The ANC, it's on the ground. They will be doing a number of new revamps of their policies. They'll be continuously engaging, but they're determined to regain their lost ground. They're determined also to continuously capture their strong bases by ensuring that they invariably provide quality service delivery to the people on the ground. So till next time, stay tuned to Beyond the Ballot on Love World Set. God bless you.